Welcome to this first ever episode of EMS Ding Dong, and we will be joining a conversation with a group of industry experts talking about what defines an event management system. This is an open conversation, and I'm sure you're really going to enjoy it. We come to some really cool and interesting conclusions. Now, what we would be interested in is your opinion as well. So if you hear or see anything today that piques your interest or that you want to feedback to us, then please hit us up in the comments below. We would love to have your opinion. And also, if you want to join us on a future episode, then again, hit us up in the comments below so that we can arrange this. Now, the reason for EMS Ding Dong is essentially to demystify the world of event marketing, also the processes that you have to run your event and all of the technology that comes around it. There are so many buzzwords, there are so many technology solutions, there's so much out there, and frankly, it's confusing. So we wanted to start this to help event organizers all around the world to have that conversation about what is this tech, what is an EMS, what is the event tech, what is good for our businesses and for our events. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this very first episode of EMS Ding Dong. Well, folks, what we're going to do is we're going to work our way around the room and get a little introduction from each and every person, and then we're going to start to have a conversation. So first of all, Simon, could you please let everybody know who you are, where you're from, and just a quick bit of background?
Sure thing. So Simon Daniels, I'm London-based and working as an independent marketing operations consultant. So that basically means that I get involved with everything to do with data, marketing technology, process, to do with marketing, and to a large extent the interface into the sales organization as well. So that certainly means things like CRM and marketing automation, data strategy, and the processes that go around, especially things like lead management, pipeline, and then also on into tracking and measurement of marketing activity to ultimately measure the impact that marketing is making to the business. Event management systems certainly come under the marketing technology banner for me, in the sense that it forms part of the stack, and if events is either a part of the marketing activities undertaken by a business, or indeed that is the core of their business, then that's a crucial element of that.
Awesome. Mr. Neil, all the way over there in Portugal, could you give us a little bit of background?
It's good to follow on from Simon there, because I'm Neil Mortimer. My current role is looking at digital innovations at Wonder London. We're in a typical services-based events agency. We work with clients to put on what typically are B2B expo events. Google are one of our large clients that we work with, but BT and several others. My background is in producing production of events, and typically this requirement of event technology started to come into the mist a little while ago, it's become a huge component that isn't necessarily just what the producer can pick up, but is required with its own separate discipline. And so my role at Wonder currently is to really look at our entire stack of what we're looking to integrate into our events. That typical stack can be as much as the larger event technology companies portraying that they can cover all bases with one solution, right down to what's, I think, become very evident in the past 2 years or so, that really the innovation, the brilliant innovation, is coming out of the smaller teams. And the smaller, most interesting pieces of technology that are breaking down barriers in terms of their capability are coming out of the event technology startup community. And so from an agency offering, we're always challenged to put together the best stack of event technology to fulfill how we see it, the overall business objectives. This isn't just about event objectives. This is a marketing channel like any other, and now with the ability to digitize it, you can treat it such. And therefore, we're continually looking at what is the set of technology that's going to fulfill those business objectives, and why are we picking those? What's our strategy for the event in the first place? And this is a huge, obviously the topic of what we're talking about, a huge component of that now is becoming critically difficult for clients to be able to determine that, and their sort of default is, well, we'll just go and use one of the big boys because they can do everything. And we know that that's not where the innovation lies, but yet you've got the challenge of having all of that data in one place. The argument always for an all-in-one solution seems to be it's easier. Well, just because it's easier, that doesn't make it better. In fact, that kind of is the way that we see it. You're not fulfilling your job correctly. You're not doing your job. You wouldn't accept that for other elements of the event. The AV company, well, we'll just put a simple system in because it's easier. Now, we don't want to do any 360 projection because that's more difficult. You'd never ever stop yourself there, and event technology is no different in our opinion. And so it's an ongoing challenge, but in my opinion, it's an exciting one. And so to define the event management solution is realistically an integrated stack of best-in-class technology, in my opinion, and that's not one size fits all. That's the difficult task of pulling all of these different elements together to fulfill your business objectives.
I think what you're saying is an EMS is not like a glove, as they would like you to believe. Now, before we carry on, Nick is dedicating himself to both this call and to the cricket. Nick, can you let us know who you are, a bit of your background as well, before we keep going?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Nick Paul. I'm from DigiSay. My background's originally running conferences and exhibitions with some of the bigger players in the market. And then in recent times, I launched DigiSay, which helps organisers exploit the opportunities from technology and social media. So we run training programs for the large exhibition organisers in how to use social media to sell. And we also work with organisers to create sort of digital marketing strategies. The other side of the business is actually working with really exciting tech companies and then introducing them to the market. So we work with the tech companies to develop their products and make them fit the markets we're looking to try and enter. And also we go out and obviously sell for them as well. So we have relations with a lot of big agencies, exhibition companies and conference organisers. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what we do.
Phenomenal. Mr. Tim, I know who you are, but people watching may not. So let us know who you are. Give us a bit of background, buddy.
So I'm Tim Davis. I run with Lee Jackson, also on this call, Event Engine. Event Engine is a product, a content management system for conferences and events, hence the name Event Engine. We started that as it was birthed out of a design agency about a decade ago. The design agency that was it still runs today. It is from the outset of that design agency immersed in the event world, and very simply we realized that there was plenty of room in the world of Marcoms for more players that could have nimble, easy to evolve technology that, well, not just easy to evolve, technology that needed to evolve. Even a decade ago, things were changing quite quickly, but nothing like they are now. So Event Engine, the product, was born about 10 years ago, and then in 2016, Event Engine, the company, was launched as a result of the success of that product.
Awesome. And then finally, my name is Lee, business partner with Tim from Event Engine, and I also run another business for agencies, and we've actually put on an event as well. So I think that event was called Agency Transformation Live. So we've kind of had both sides of the coin with regards to producing software for event organizers, but also being event organizers as well, and running some very big conferences, and it's very highly stressful. So I think here today on this call, we've got a really good representation of a whole load of different people. We have people providing tech. We have people introducing, like Nick is introducing people to technology in the events industry. We've got Neil as well, a part of an exciting agency, Simon as well with his digital expertise. So I think we've got a really good broad mix. And what I would love, and Neil did get a little bit ahead, so I'm looking forward to some more of Neil's opinions on this as well, but I would love to see if each person on this call could try and define in as succinct a way as possible, so almost like a tweet, say up to 2 minutes worth, of what you believe an EMS actually is, and perhaps what an EMS is to you, because Tim alluded to this quite early on, that an EMS potentially is different to many different people, and Neil also alluded earlier as well that this kind of one-size-fits-all is probably a fable. So Simon, could we start with you?
Sure. The metaphor I sometimes use for an event management system is a little bit like Microsoft Outlook, in the sense that it's a disparate number of functions that on the face of it you wouldn't necessarily think of being in one package, but actually it all makes sense. So just as having an email application and a calendar application in one doesn't immediately seem to make sense, it does when you start thinking that you want to send an invite to somebody by email. So there's your combination. Who are you going to send your emails to? Your contact list. So that's your contacts in that same application, and so on. Event management is similar. You start off thinking, well, I need to be able to manage my agenda. Who's on the agenda? The speakers. What do the speakers have? Bios. Who's coming to the event? That's your delegates. And it builds up and builds up so that you've got all those different aspects all in one place. So that ideally what you can efficiently manage is ultimately an event website featuring your agenda, your speakers, your sessions, that will make possible a mobile application that the delegates can log into, and who can register for the event, and so on. And so all of those things all in one place, all linking together, meaning that the event producer doesn't have to be jumping in and out of different systems. They don't have to be exporting and importing data from different places. A change to the agenda on the website is reflected in the app, and so on. And then, I mean, it's interesting as to whether the M does stand for marketing or management, because of course you can start then building in marketing functionality. You know, email marketing, obviously, and other digital marketing, as you know, part of that overall package. I'm actually slightly less sold as to whether that aspect is critical to an EMS, because you start going off down a very specialized path, and there comes a point. I'm sure I could probably think of something in Microsoft Outlook that it does very badly, where you're better off using a different application. But you know, it's obviously it's part of the stack.
Awesome. Neil, I was loving what you were saying earlier with regards to those all-in-one solutions, etc. I'd really love if you can kind of continue from what Simon's saying and share your opinion on what an EMS is to you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd agree with what Simon was saying as well there. You know, I love that way you're describing it, Simon, in terms of Outlook and the calendar integration. What you've got is those different solutions that actually are very joined up. All of that is very true, and I think that you know, for me, you know, saying that an all-in-one event management solution is not the answer, that it doesn't cover off. There's certainly some very good products out there that cover off a lot of what's needed, and so for me, I think that the event management solution can definitely contain within its the way it's built certain tools, but it can never contain everything, or can neither the developers or since it's been proven so far anyway, not to say that it's not impossible moving forward. I always expect there to be some of the big boys who have got all the big investment to actually be the people who are innovating quickest, but it seems to be that they aren't. And so for me, it's a central system for some of the functionality within it, but a single point of truth across an open API integrated world. So you have the ability to be able to look at that one individual and be able to understand that individual's touch points across the marketing component, the event marketing component. Even be able to build that persona of them across Marcom technology, but then beyond in terms of the on-site tools, event registration. It might be that you're choosing to use something like a ability to be able to do the Bluetooth badging. It could be that you're looking at other things like biometrics. You're looking at facial recognition. Obviously, we've seen that come in, and some of the work that I've seen recently by some of the suppliers in terms of that facial detection, looking at emotion, looking at movement. Now, other location technologies, you've got this broad, absolute mix of some very innovative things. They're all coming back to that individual and that individual's user journey, that customer journey through the entire ecosystem, and that can't be off in 22 different silos. That has to be from a single point of truth. And so for me, the event management solution needs to be a place where you can analyze and that single point of truth across all of your integrated technology, from the point of view of being able to best understand that individual and how that individual has interacted from the moment the event was launched right the way through to well past the event, 365 days a year. What's their behavior like across event marketing channels, on site at the event, but also other MarTech and CRM behavior, to be able to really understand how they are, who they are as an individual, and how you can best improve their experience at the event and across within the wider MarTech relationship you have with them.
So I think what you're saying here is that EMS, I love the phrase single point of truth, but you're saying here that this is the ability to track everything for your event end to end, but it does not necessarily need to be built from one product. It could be two, it could be three products that are integrated together that talk to each other. Because Simon pointed out earlier that, for example, the marketing aspect might need to be a completely separate tool which specializes in, say, perhaps we would say, I think it's Aduco or something, where you can do Facebook retargeting and marketing through that, and you can track all of your different campaigns, what's the most successful campaign and all that sort of stuff. That would need to sit outside of, but can still be connected to whatever other elements of your EMS are. Would that be
that would be 100% correct. Yeah.
Cool.
The specialist tools here are actually where it becomes, the innovation and one, the one size fits all within the EMS, trying to cover off all of that to innovate as quickly as some of the best tools on the market is going to be very impressive, very difficult. And so therefore you need that single point of truth across the whole thing. But it might be the traditional way that you'd view an event management solution, covering off things like website, potentially things like registration, some of the on-site tools that might sit within one place. And there's no reason why an event management solution can't be where the single point of truth lives. It needs to live somewhere, bottom line. Yeah. And it just depends on who that's important to. Is that important to the analyst and the data scientist, or is that important to the event manager, or is that the same person? And that's the kind of thing that it brings up.
Neil, when you talk about a single point of truth, in practical terms, are you talking about a central database in effect?
Yeah, I am. But if you look at the marketing of a lot of the larger event management solution companies, they would portray that they are that. So it is that single point of truth needs to be either sitting within that event management solution and there being the ability to have those open API integrations across the board, or what it needs to sit separately, but it needs to sit somewhere, and the whole piece needs to be integrated in there.
But even if it does sit separately, it does still need to connect.
100%. Yeah, of course. I think so. It depends what your definition of the event management solution is and what it does, right? Whether or not it's the place for that to sit or not.
Yeah. Hence the subject of this chat. Yeah.
Nick, you're in a position where you are working with both technology providers and also the actual event organizers. So with your conversations and your interactions with all these different people, I guess you're getting to see what people perceive to be an EMS. Could you share with us what you've seen out and about, what people think an EMS might be, and what your own opinions are?
Yeah, I think really one of the main things is, which Neil alluded to earlier, it all goes back to the business objectives, because when you're working with different types of companies organising different types of events, their whole premise in organising events are completely different. If you go to one of the big exhibition organisers, everything now seems to be going through their CRM. I mean, these companies are spending millions upon millions to make their CRM the central focus of everything they do. So whatever technology you bring into their organisation, it has to somehow work with Salesforce or the other CRMs that they may be using. But I think really looking at an EMS overall, I think it means different things to different organisations. Some will focus it being the website being the core basis, and I think also as well it's I think in an idealistic way, everything will be integrated. There'd be innovation, there'd be productivity. I think when you look at an EMS, you're looking to make sure that you're saving time, you're making money, and you're speeding the acquisition times for bringing in sponsors and attendees, but also you're engaging those attendees. And I think that organisers at different levels up the sort of the tiers in terms of the revenues and budgets they have available will look at different items and say these are our pain points and these are our sort of our wants, and then once they measure those two up, they'll build their own EMS, taking different aspects and different technologies and in a number of cases using different shortcuts as well. In terms of the marketing piece, social media is so very important, but you can't really say that LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter are part of the EMS, but essentially they're key channels to drive traffic to the site and to drive registrations and to build the engagement. But in some other instances, within other businesses, their industry blog on their website may be that key forum for the industry or the market that they're serving. So I think it's a very broad thing, and I think it means something different to every organizer. And I think that if you give every organizer double the budget to spend on technology, it would mean something completely different again. So I think it's down to revenues, internal resources. If a team have got a very, very structured process in place for dealing with 1,000 speakers, and they're incredibly happy with how they do it, even if they do it just on a load of spreadsheets that then are uploaded onto their website, if they're happy with it, they're not going to invest in changing it. So I think that's one of the key elements is the only way you can define the EMS is actually by understanding the needs and what the organizer is currently doing.
I love that you said that. One of the conversations me and Tim have been having really for the last few months is that for us, an EMS is the process rather than the tools that allow you to facilitate that process. So how do you build up your audience? How do you convert those leads? How do you then manage the registration data? How do you get them on site? How do you, even reconcile invoices? There's all sorts of stuff going on. But if an event organization does not have specific processes, then no matter whether they find an all-in-one EMS or whether or not they bolt multiple solutions together, they're still not going to solve their problems if they have not got some sort of process, standard operating procedures, whatever they are. You need to know what it is you're doing, what the outcome is that you want and how you do that each step along the way. If that is your process document becomes the blueprint, as it were, for whatever EMS you can put together. And then you can get people like Nick, Simon, Neil, etc., into your offices or into your environment to help develop whatever solution that might be. It might be 3 different tools, it might be 10, or it might be 1 if, like Neil said, someone has super innovated and created the most amazing EMS flexible in the world. Tim, how about you? What are your experiences?
Well, I think you pretty much said what I was going to say, but I'll say it in a different way.
Just say ditto.
Ditto. Well said, Lee. Yeah, you're talking in terms of EMS as a concept. One of the things you just said, Nick, was that obviously a lot of marketing relies on social media. Any event that doesn't do social media have social media as part of a key thread in their communications just is not doing the right thing now. But I think just because it's a lot of the time free, I personally don't think that we therefore strike it off the list as that can't be a part of an EMS. If event management system, if you just take the word system, I run a home with 4 children with my wife, and we have a system every day of dinner time, how that works, how that flows, who does what. The kids are at a certain age now where they can help clean up after dinner. We have a system. There's no tech involved, well, apart from the dishwasher. But there's a system there. We know what we want. And I think whereas probably maybe a decade ago, a request for proposals would probably look like, okay, we've ended up with 3 products in the room represented by 3 different sales teams. Tell us what A does, tell us what B does, tell us what C does. This is probably the day of, rather than just picking what's the best of a bunch of systems or tech that's available to me, take a step back. What is your system? Just like dinner time, what do I actually want to do? How does my organization work right now? How can I bring in some tech that's going to facilitate what my system is? I think we're in an age where more than ever before we're able to do that. So I would absolutely argue that if the whole thing could be free tools, it'd be nice, wouldn't it? But I see that as a definition of an EMS. What's your system? It doesn't even have to be unique to you, but just specify what your particular system is and then build the tech around that.
I mean, Nick pointed it out well, didn't he, as well, where he said, if you have your system and you track it all in spreadsheets and that works for you, well, then you've nailed it, haven't you? And you don't have to have the tech, obviously. I mean, in an ideal world, you would have a nice automated flow. And I mean, automation is something for me that's definitely a big part of any sort of VMS, especially when it comes with when we were taking our ticket sales for our conference earlier this year. I had to have all the bank reconciliation and everything just automated, because otherwise it would have just been too much work, etc. So for us, that was part of our process where we would register the payment. We would create we have QuickBooks, so we would actually create the client automatically. We would then attribute the invoice to them and then attribute the payment to them and track that against the bank. So we'd done all of our double accounting and everything was all there for us, so that we weren't being overwhelmed with everything else. But that's because we had a physical system that we were then able to automate. So that went from what we would do manually through to using something like Zapier to automate that whole process. What I would love... sorry, carry on.
Well, just one thing, going back on the point there. I think that the other element we're not taking into account is actually the human element. So if you've got systems that are working and then as an organization, you look at how you're updating it, I think there's also sort of fear as well, on fear of adoption as well. So if you're looking at, say, someone looks after the programming for a conference, looks after the relationships with the speakers. If you say, right, we've got this great new tool, we can do it all online, that person's then going to feel threatened by it, will then sort of almost create project fear around it. And I think and sometimes it's about the characters within the organizations and the position of respect they have as well, that can sometimes hamper technologies getting into organizers where they really should be.
Well, yeah, I just to follow up on that, I'd 100% agree with it. I think with that point, I think that, I think event industry, is one of an event managers, and rightly so, really, are very risk adverse, because they have one shot at it. If it's an event that happens once a year, or obviously several events they have, but each event is a one-off, really a year, let's call it. And if it goes wrong, it goes wrong, and if they've got a system that works well, it might not be perfect, but we know it works. And there's this whole play in the market around that, especially. What you have, I think, a lot of the time is that you have those decision makers, especially that sit client side, who their speciality isn't necessarily adopting software as a solution for the jobs that are needed to be done to produce an event to the standard that they want to produce it to. They therefore, to adopt a software and a data-driven strategy across everything that they're doing, it means that them as an individual is no longer the specialist to be able to deliver a project that has this whole new component to it. And so from the point of view of somebody feeling threatened from doing the scheduling for the speakers, 100%, but broadly across the board, the technology has got the ability, and I believe will, to completely evolve face-to-face and events, to make them a much more digitized marketing channel, to almost make them seem like they're a marketing channel like any other. But those individuals who are in the key decision-making roles are not, and I'm talking broadly because of course there's some specialists out there that do a fantastic job, but broadly are not necessarily going to adopt that system that easily, because they're risk adverse and because they're not necessarily the specialist to deliver that solution. That's a new solution that their skill set isn't adapted for.
I totally agree, and I think not just that. I think that event managers are the most risk averse people, but actually event managers in the UK are way more risk averse than, say, our American counterparts.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Who they're jumping, go, yeah, great, there's some tech that can do everything for us, right, let's get in there, and everyone gets trained up, everyone knows the tech inside out, they'll go to user conferences on the technology, they'll completely buy into it. Whereas over here, I think sometimes we get a tentative buy-in on some techs, the tech's taken on board, and then the organizer doesn't actually recognize that the tech they've invested in is a tool, and a tool has to be used. You can have the best drill in the world, but if you don't pick it up and sort of drill the wall, it's not going to make a hole.
Well, that's just it, isn't it? I think we see that so many times of people saying, well, it didn't really work for us. We used 5% of its capabilities, and therefore it was never going to revolutionize everything you're doing. It's a difficult one because, a lot of the time across many other marketing channels, it's an ongoing day-to-day basis, and adopting new techniques might not go right for the first week, but then it irons itself out and people very quickly get up to speed. Whereas in this vertical, it's much more sporadic than that, and therefore people are naturally risk averse. But you're right, America don't know what it is, mentality around that, encouragement from right at the top. They seem to really be adopting things quickly, and I think there's an interesting element for the event agency coming at it from where I sit, which is where you've normally been delegated all the tasks that are difficult from the client. You're seeing now a lot of the larger businesses like AWS, businesses like Salesforce. They're taking a lot of this technology analyst strategic work in-house, and actually developing technology themselves to join up the dots here for this single point of truth. And that might be the appropriate thing to do. But they have huge resource. You've got this interesting gap below that kind of business that therefore isn't adopting this because of the reasons before mentioned, and there's these two different kind of approaches. There's a kind of a gap there that kind of needs to be filled for us to be able to progress this space.
Simon, what do you think of this so far?
Yeah, I mean, the couple of points I was going to make there, just bringing together a couple of threads, I think, are to your point, process and also the people element that's been mentioned. So again, working across even a single system, but certainly multiple systems, having that understanding as to how it's going to work together is crucial, because otherwise that's where the frustrations come in and the inefficiencies, and the tech just doesn't seem to work right because the processes haven't been worked out. And then again, making sure that the technology is integrated, particularly if you're working across different systems. So we've had mention of APIs. The CRM system, does tend to be absolutely central. I'm looking at a piece of work for somebody where, it started out being, what should our CRM strategy and kind of delegate management approach be? But you soon go off into, how are you handling registrations? How are you handling your web presence? And it all, rapidly becomes apparent just how linked up and joined together it is. And it's crucial to think in those terms. So I think those aspects are absolutely central. Yeah.
Great. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time here. I'm just going to have a quick crack at trying to summarize some things we've covered off here. First of all, I don't think we've really progressed with a definition of what an EMS actually is.
I'd argue with that.
Go on.
I would argue
with that.
I think we have. I think we've nailed the fact that an EMS is not one product, but an EMS is what your process is. I think we've all said it in slightly different ways. An EMS is the process that you run your business. The EMS itself is just the tools that help facilitate whatever the process is that your business has. And if your tools aren't working, it's very possible, I think, that your process isn't working. And that could be what Nick was saying and what Neil was saying with regards to user adoption, the people as well, either the process or the fear of tech. So I feel like we have come to a kind of definition, and that we're erring away from an EMS being a, oh, look at this product I can purchase off the counter, to being that process and a group of tools to, like Neil said, get that single source of truth. Sorry to argue with that.
I think it's also that it's actually not an event management system, it's an event management solution, because it's a series of products and technologies that you put together. It's not, you could have it in one system, but I think if you have, then essentially what's probably happened is you've got a really good relationship with probably your key supplier, be it a registration provider or whoever else, and then you throw everything in to them because you trust them for what they do with the registration. And I think that's one of the things which has become quite dangerous, is that companies and organizations are chucking everything in, perhaps to the wrong people for the wrong things. So it's all about the relationships they're building with those clients, and because they're spending so much money with them, they give them greater sort of leverage in discussions on a bigger project.
Good point.
I was going to suggest the S could stand for suite, event management suite.
Sweet, yeah.
There you
It's
go.
had an upgrade already.
I could work in marketing.
I like the sound of that. I do like the sound of that, I must say.
Sweet.
I'll have a go at event management smorgasbord.
Yeah, that's the reality.
Although if we can have a show of hands, I do think Simon's nailed it with Suite, because Suite is a suite of tools, and it could be from like your Microsoft Office, which is a suite of tools, one company, or it could be a group of tools. I'm loving that, Simon. I just want to give you a little fist bump. Just there you go.
I mean, I personally just think, I know I've said it before, but I personally think it has to be the way that we're seeing innovation work, not across just this vertical, but any. I think that the larger companies, I won't name names, but we know them, they were in a fantastic position to capitalize upon being the most innovative. But for one reason or another, they haven't kept pace with the small teams of creators. And therefore, their solution that you kind of spend all of that money with to kind of do everything all in one, if it did do everything all in one better than anything else, then fab, we've all got an easier life. It just doesn't. It just simply doesn't.
But but those companies use their resources to build the relationships. Once the product's there and it's solid, it's like, right, bang. Now we've gone through the development curve.
100%.
Now we're really going to milk it. We're going to build relationships. We're going to take the clients out. We're going to be at every event. And we know we've all been to the industry events. We know what it's like. But the reason that the pioneering technology also comes from niches as well. It comes from the smaller companies focused on a smaller area where they get completely immerse themselves. And then, I work with a couple of companies who are very specific in what they do. I won't name names because I'm not looking to pitch them. But they are both companies that deal in just small elements of the event. They do it really, really well.
Yeah.
And to levels that can't be done by these bigger companies that have the opportunity to grow these smaller sort of offshoots. But have just said, right, we're just going to milk this as much as possible and just focus on developing relationships and revenues.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you see it across loads of different verticals, of course. But yeah, I completely agree with that.
That's awesome. All right, folks. Well, we're coming into land. This has been the very first episode, and I'm absolutely loving the kind of dynamic where we're all having a conversation. We've come up with a new label of Event Management Suite. If you are watching this and you are one of the technology providers that Neil mentions, one of the smaller companies who are innovating them, we want you to come and join us on these sorts of conversations. We're going to have different people on. We'll have people coming back as well. And we want to do this on a bi-weekly basis, and we continue this conversation about either different platforms or different elements of event management and event marketing. So we're calling this EMS Ding Dong, but we are going to be covering a really wide variety of subjects. So be sure, if you're watching us on YouTube, to like and subscribe, because that's what YouTubers say. And if you're on LinkedIn, be sure as well to follow and to connect in with all of us. So all that is left for us to do is for each person to say how you can be connected, and then we shall say goodbye. So let's start with Simon. How can people connect with you best?
Best thing to do probably is to look for me on Twitter, where I am Marketing Insight Guy, which is MKTG Insight Guy. And I try and tweet from time to time on anything that interests me in the marketing operations space. I like to think of it as thought curation. And you can reach out to me from there if there's anything you see that's interesting.
Awesome. And Neil?
Yeah, I'm most active on LinkedIn. That's my fave. So if you just look for me, Neil Mortimer, Digital Innovation Director at Wonder London, that's the best place to reach out for me for sure. Awesome. Nick?
Yeah, LinkedIn as well. Nick Paul. Just search Nick Paul and DigiSay, and I'll pop up. And I'm interested in meeting and talking to organisers of all shapes and sizes who are looking at their digital footprint and what they're doing digitally, what tech they're using. Interested to have a chat with anyone out there.
Awesome. And I will make sure that everybody's LinkedIn links will be in the notes of this episode as well. Tim, yourself, best way to connect?
Down the pub, mate.
Excellent. He likes beer.
Yeah. If not, if you can't find me there, Tim Davis, Davies on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Also me on LinkedIn, and you can find both me and Tim over on Event Engine as well. It's eventengine.tv. All right, folks. Thank you very much. Have an awesome day. Cheerio.
Thank you, chaps.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.